It was an April afternoon in New York, but for Jonathan Harrison the air was still thick and cold. The powerful CEO of Harrison Global, a tech and finance empire, stood on the highest floor of a skyscraper on Fifth Avenue. The city stretched out at his feet, an ocean of energy and sound that never slept, but in this luxurious penthouse apartment there was only a chilling, profound silence. 3 years. 3 years since the fated car accident took Sarah, his wife, and the only light in his life. 3 years since his daughter Emily retreated into an untouchable world of silence. Jonathan could command billions of dollars and manipulate financial markets, yet he was powerless in the face of a broken heart. He had taken Emily all over the world to the best doctors and the leading therapists, but every effort was in vain. Today he had just left their final therapy session. The female doctor, a woman with patient eyes and a gentle voice, had told him the words he feared most. "Jonathan, we have done all we can." Emily's selective mutism is a deep-seated defense mechanism. She is protecting herself from the pain. The only thing we can do now is give her the space to find her own way. Jonathan sat quietly in the car, watching the glass buildings reflect the grey sky. He felt like he was sinking inside a crystal box where everything was transparent, but no one could hear his screams. Emily sat in the back seat, completely silent. Her golden hair, just like Sarah's, caught the light like strands of spun gold. Her blue eyes gazed out the window, fixed on some indistinct point that only she could see. Jonathan tried to speak, his voice hoarse. "Emily, let's go somewhere. Shall we go play, my love?" Emily did not reply. She only gave a slight nod, a familiar gesture that Jonathan had learned to decipher as a sign of hopelessness. They arrived at a large park in Queens. Jonathan had chosen this place deliberately. He wanted Emily to be immersed in a different setting, one that wasn't the perfect order of his world. The laughter of children echoed everywhere, like a symphony he had forgotten how to feel. The atmosphere here was lively, chaotic, and authentic. This only highlighted the isolation of the father and daughter. Emily sat on an empty swing, her small legs swinging listlessly. She watched the other children running and playing ball, her eyes filled with longing, but never joining in. Jonathan stood at a distance, his heart aching. He saw his daughter as a princess trapped in a high tower who could only watch the world from afar, but could never step into it. It was then that he saw the boy, a boy with a mop of disheveled blonde hair and faded clothes. His sneakers had a few rips and his t-shirt was baggy, likely a hand-me-down. But his smile, that smile, could light up the entire city. He was engrossed in building something in the sandbox, his small tongue sticking out in concentration as he used his bare hands to mold the sand. Other children were playing around, but the boy seemed completely lost in his own world. He was creating an intricate castle with turrets and a moat. Suddenly, Emily got up from the bench. Her movement was so quick that it startled Jonathan. She walked toward the sandbox with a clear purpose, something he hadn't seen in his daughter in 3 years. Jonathan followed at a distance, his heart pounding. The boy looked up as Emily approached his face, lighting up like Christmas morning. "Hi," he said, his voice full of friendliness and innocence. "Do you want to help me build this castle? I'm building it for a princess, but I think I need someone who knows what real princess is like." Emily stopped right in front of the sandbox. Her eyes widened, focusing on his creation. She knelt down on the sand, not minding that her expensive dress was getting dirty, and reached out to touch one of the turrets. "Careful," the boy said quickly but not harshly. "It's still a little wobbly." "Oh, by the way, I'm Liam," he said, his eyes sparkling as he looked at Emily. "What's your name?" Jonathan held his breath. This was the moment that always broke his heart. When other children expected Emily to speak and she couldn't, the disappointment on their faces would often make Emily run back to him. But today, something was different. Emily parted her lips. And for the first time in 3 years, 2 months and 16 days, she whispered a single word, the word that changed everything, Emily. Jonathan's legs almost gave out. Emily had spoken. His little silent Emily had just said her name to a complete stranger. The word hung in the air like an answered prayer, and Jonathan felt tears streaming down his cheeks before he could stop them. 3 years, 2 months and 16 days of silence broken by a scruffy-haired boy with a kind heart. Liam's face lit up like the 4th of July fireworks Emily used to love before her world sank into silence. "Emily, that's such a beautiful name," he exclaimed, clapping his sand-covered hands together with a pure joy. "It's just like Princess Emma in my favorite book from the library. She could talk to animals and make flowers bloom just by smiling at them. Do you want to help me with the drawbridge? I can't figure out how to make it open and close right." Jonathan watched in amazement as Emily nodded eagerly, something he hadn't seen her do since before Sarah passed away. She scooted closer to Liam in the sandbox, her pristine dress now smudged with yellow sand, and began carefully shaping the castle's entrance with the small fingers that hadn't known how to play in years. "My mummy used to read stories about castles," Emily whispered, her voice tiny but as clear as crystal to Jonathan's longing ears. Each word was a miracle, a gift he thought he would never get back. She said, "Every castle needs a secret garden where the princess can go when she's sad, a beautiful and quiet place where she can think about happy things." Liam's eyes widened with excitement, and he began to dig in the sand with renewed enthusiasm. "A secret garden. That's the best idea ever. We can put it right behind the main tower with tiny flowers made of colored sand." He paused, looking at Emily with a curiosity that held no judgment. "Your mummy sounds really smart and nice. Is she picking you up later, or are you going home with your daddy?" Jonathan's heart stopped. This was always the hardest part, the moment other kids asked about her mother, and Emily's face would close off like slamming shutters. He had seen it happen dozens of times, watched her retreat back into silence when the questions became too difficult to face. But today was different. Emily's hands stilled in the sand, but she didn't run away. She didn't flinch. Instead, she looked straight at Liam with her incredible blue eyes, Sarah's eyes, and said with a steady composure that both shattered and mended Jonathan's heart. "Mummy is in heaven," she said simply, her voice carrying a grace that seemed to defy her 7 years. "She watches me from the stars every night. Daddy showed me which one is hers. It's the brightest one right over our house." Liam stopped digging completely and looked at Emily with an understanding that went far beyond his 7 years. The sounds of the playground seemed to fade around them as he processed her words with the seriousness they deserved. "My daddy is in heaven too," he said softly, his voice dropping to match her reverent tone. "He went there when I was 5, but I remember everything about him. He had the biggest hands in the world, and he used to build the best sandcastles. My mum says he watches me from the biggest star in the sky, the one that looks like it's winking. She says he sends me good dreams sometimes, especially when I'm scared or lonely." Jonathan felt his heart both expand and break at the same time. These 2 children, both wounded by loss at such tender ages, had found each other in a sandbox and were sharing their deepest pain with the innocent honesty that only children possess. They spoke of death and heaven with the matter-of-fact acceptance that comes from being forced to grow up too soon. "Maybe they're friends up there," Emily offered, and for the first time in over 3 years a genuine smile touched her lips. Not the polite, practiced smile she had learned to wear for doctors and therapists, but a spontaneous, authentic expression of hope. I bet they are. Liam agreed, his smile as brilliant as hers. And I bet they're really happy we're friends here. Maybe they helped us find each other today. As the afternoon sun began to set, bathing the playground in a golden light that made everything seem magical, Jonathan realized something profound was happening. His daughter wasn't just speaking, she was healing. The locked-away part of her soul was opening up like a flower, turning toward the sun, and it was all thanks to a little boy with ripped sneakers and a heart bigger than the sky. But as he watched them play, carefully building their castle and their friendship with equal care, Jonathan couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was too perfect, too fragile. What would happen when this afternoon ended? What would happen tomorrow or next week? Could something so beautiful truly last? "Daddy, can Tommy come to our house?" Emily asked as they walked toward the Mercedes. Her small hand was still clasped in Jonathan's, but now with a sense of excited energy instead of the desperate need he had grown accustomed to. Her voice carried a lightness he had forgotten it ever possessed. Jonathan looked back at the sandbox where Liam was carefully dismantling their castle, saving the sand for tomorrow's children, with a thoughtfulness that spoke volumes about his character. The boy looked up and waved enthusiastically at Emily, his gapped-toothed smile infectious and pure, a smile that could light up the darkest room. "We'll see, sweetheart," Jonathan said, though his mind was already racing with questions and anxieties. Who was this child? Where were his parents? Why was he alone in the park? And more importantly, what would happen to Emily's newfound voice if this friendship couldn't continue? "Liam." Jonathan called out, the CEO's instincts kicking in as he approached the boy. "Is someone coming to pick you up? It's starting to get dark." The boy trotted over with boundless energy, sand still clinging to his worn clothes and his hair sticking up in every direction. "Oh, I walk home. It's not far, just past the old brewery on Maple Street and around the corner by the laundromat with the flickering neon sign. My mum works at Danny's Diner until 8:00 p.m, so I come here most afternoons after school. Sometimes I go to the library first, but the park is my favorite because I can build things and use my imagination." Jonathan felt his blood run cold. Maple Street was one of the roughest neighborhoods in the city, a place where even police patrolled in pairs. The thought of a 7-year-old boy walking alone through those streets every afternoon was unthinkable. It was the kind of thing that kept parents up at night with worry. "How long have you been walking alone?" Jonathan asked, trying to keep his voice casual while his mind calculated all the dangers a child could face in that area. Liam shrugged, with the nonchalance of someone too young to fully comprehend the risks he faced every day. "Since school started in September, my mum said I'm responsible enough now since I'm 7.5. Besides, Mrs. Garcia next door always keeps an eye out from her window, and Mr. Pete at the corner store always waves and sometimes gives me a free candy if I help him carry groceries for the old ladies." Emily tugged at Jonathan's sleeve urgently, her eyes bright with an idea. "Daddy, can we give Liam a ride home? It's getting dark and he shouldn't walk alone when it's dark." Jonathan looked into his daughter's pleading eyes that had been so empty and lifeless for so long, and knew he couldn't deny her first genuine request in years. The protective instinct he had for Emily naturally extended to this remarkable boy who had given her back her voice. "Of course, Liam. Would you like a ride home? We'd be happy to take you." The car ride was a revelation that changed everything Jonathan thought he knew about a child's resilience. Liam talked non-stop about school, about his favourite teacher, Ms. Patterson, who let him help with story time, about his mum's famous tamales that all the neighbours begged for, and about his big dream to become an astronaut so he could visit his dad among the stars. Emily listened to every word, occasionally adding her own quiet remarks, each one a miracle to Jonathan's ears. "You really want to go to outer space?" she asked. "That sounds scary." "Not scary," Liam gently corrected. "Awesome. Think about it, Emily. You could see the whole world from up there, and all the problems that seem big down here would look so small. Besides, I bet the view of heaven from space is even better." As they pulled up in front of a small, worn-down apartment building on Maple Street, Jonathan's heart sank. Paint peeled from the walls like old skin. The front steps looked ready to crumble with just a little weight, and several windows were covered with cardboard instead of glass. This was poverty in its rawest, most unforgiving form. "Thank you for the ride, sir." Liam paused, realizing he didn't know Jonathan's last name, despite spending the afternoon together. "Harrison." Jonathan replied, watching the boy's face carefully. "Jonathan Harrison." Liam's eyes widened with genuine recognition and excitement. Like Harrison Global, the big building downtown with all the shiny windows that reflect the clouds. "My mum cleans offices there sometimes on the weekends when they need extra help." Jonathan nodded, surprised that the boy not only knew his company, but spoke of it with such enthusiasm. "My mum always says the people who work there must be really important because everything is so clean and fancy." Liam beamed with an innocent pride. "That's so cool. Emily, your dad is like a superhero in a suit." As Liam disappeared into the building, waving enthusiastically until he was out of sight, Jonathan realized something deeply troubling. Emily had found her voice. But at what cost? Liam lived in a world Jonathan barely understood, a world of struggle and instability, as foreign to him as another planet. What would happen when these two disparate worlds collided? And more importantly, what would happen to Emily if those two worlds couldn't find a way to coexist? That night, while Emily played alone in her room, talking to her stuffed animals for the first time in years, creating intricate stories that drifted through the house like a melody, Jonathan's mind raced with Liam's casual mention of an eviction notice. He tried to convince himself that it wasn't his responsibility. He had built Harrison Global from nothing by making tough decisions, by understanding that business was business and emotion was a luxury that successful people couldn't afford. Personally intervening in the financial affairs of every person who touched his life was a recipe for disaster. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Liam's gapped-toothed smile and heard Emily's laughter echoing through the house for the first time since Sarah had died. How could he weigh business principles against his daughter's miraculous recovery? At midnight, Jonathan found himself in his mahogany-paneled study laptop open, researching everything he could about 847 Maple Street Apartment 3B. What he discovered in the public records made his stomach twist with a mix of sadness and anger at life's sheer unfairness. Maria Rodriguez, age 28, worked 3 part-time jobs cleaning offices for minimum wage in the early mornings, washing dishes at Danny's Diner during the dinner rush, and occasionally babysitting for neighbors when her schedule allowed. Her husband Diego had died in a construction accident 18 months ago, leaving behind massive medical bills from a 3-week fight for his life and no life insurance to fall back on. The eviction notice was for 3 months of back rent, totaling $1,800. Jonathan stared at the number on the screen with disbelief. $1,800. He spent more than that on a single dinner at Le Bernardin. It was less than he paid for his car's monthly maintenance. For the Rodriguez family, it was the difference between having a roof over their heads and living on the street. Jonathan picked up his phone 3 times to call his assistant Margaret to have her cut a check and handle the matter quietly and efficiently, but each time he hesitated. What message would that send? What would happen next month when they couldn't make rent again? Was he solving a problem or creating a dependency that would ultimately make things worse? The next afternoon at the park, Liam seemed different. Quieter, less animated, his usual boundless energy subdued by a worry that was too heavy for a child's shoulders. When Emily asked him to help build another castle, he agreed. But his heart wasn't in it. His movements were mechanical, distracted. "Liam, are you okay?" Emily asked, with an intuitive concern that seemed to be her new superpower. "You seem sad today. Did something happen?" Liam's hands stilled in the sand, and for a moment Jonathan saw the weight of adult concerns pressing down on a child's face. "My mum was crying again last night after she thought I was asleep. The man from the apartment office came by, and he wasn't very nice to her. He said bad things about people who don't pay their bills, and he gave her a new paper that says we have to leave in 2 weeks if we can't pay." Liam looked up at Emily with eyes that had seen too much. "I don't want to move away, Emily. I just found my best friend, and I don't want to lose another one." Emily's face crumpled with an expression Jonathan hadn't seen since the day they told her her mother wasn't coming home. "You can't move. You're the only one who understands about mommies and daddies in heaven. You're the only one who makes me want to talk." Jonathan watched his daughter's face cycle through emotions he hadn't seen in 3 years. Anger, fear, desperation, and a fierce protectiveness that reminded him so much of Sarah it took his breath away. She was feeling deeply and completely again, and it was both beautiful and terrifying. "Maybe your daddy can help," Liam said suddenly, looking at Jonathan with hopeful eyes that carried the weight of a family's future. "He's important, right? Important people can fix things that regular people can't." The weight of both children's expectant gazes settled on Jonathan's shoulders like lead. He was an important person. He could fix this. But should he? And if he did, what would the consequences be for everyone involved? "I'll see what I can do," Jonathan heard himself say, even though his mind was screaming warnings about boundaries and complications and the dangerous territory of mixing business with personal feelings. That night, as Jonathan tucked Emily into bed in the room that still smelled faintly of Sarah's lavender perfume, she looked up at him with her incredible blue eyes and said the words that would haunt him for the sleepless nights to come. "Daddy, if Liam moves away, I think I might stop talking again. He's the only one who makes the words want to come out of the quiet place where they've been hiding. Without him, I don't know if I'll remember how to use my voice." Jonathan realized with crystal clarity that he wasn't just being asked to help a family in need. He was being asked to save his daughter's voice, her healing, her future. But was he strong enough to build a bridge between two worlds that seemed destined to remain a universe apart? And what would be the cost of even trying? Jonathan stood outside 847 Maple Street at 7:30 a.m. the next morning, holding an envelope containing a certified check for $5,000, enough to cover the back rent and the next several months. He had barely slept, wrestling with Sarah's voice in his head, her gentle wisdom echoing in his memories. "You can't fix everything with money, Bobby," she had often said when he tried to write checks for problems that required more than a financial solution. "Sometimes a heart needs more than a wallet can provide. Sometimes people need to feel like they've earned their dignity." But what was the alternative? To let Liam and his mother be evicted? To watch Emily retreat back into silence? Sometimes money was the only tool he had, the only language he was fluent enough in to help. The apartment building looked even more dilapidated in the harsh morning light. Grime covered most of the first-floor walls, the front steps were cracked and uneven, and the smell of garbage and desperation seemed to hang in the air like a fog. Jonathan climbed the creaking staircase to apartment 3B, each step echoing his doubt, and knocked softly on the door. The woman who opened the door was not what he expected. Maria Rodriguez was beautiful in a way that hardship couldn't touch, with high cheekbones that spoke of native heritage, intelligent, dark eyes that missed nothing, and an air of dignity that poverty couldn't diminish. She wore a worn but immaculately clean uniform, and she held a mug of coffee that smelled like it was mostly butter and hope. "Mr. Harrison," she said, recognizing him immediately from Liam's excited descriptions. "Liam has told me all about you and Emily. He hasn't stopped talking about his new friend since yesterday. Please come in." The apartment was small but spotless. Every surface was wiped until it gleamed. Everything was arranged with military precision, and though the poverty was evident, there was love in every corner. Liam sat at a small table doing his homework, his small tongue sticking out in concentration, and he looked up with a mix of surprise and delight at the sight of Jonathan. "Mr. Harrison, Emily's daddy, are you here to see my room? I have a telescope that my daddy gave me before he went to heaven, and sometimes I look at the stars and tell him about my day." "Mission Liam, finish your math homework," Maria said gently, her voice carrying the authority of a mother who was also her son's anchor. She turned to Jonathan with an inquisitive look. "I apologize for our small quarters. Can I offer you some coffee? It's not fancy, but it's strong." Jonathan looked around the modest space. The carefully mended furniture, the hand-drawn pictures that covered the refrigerator, the nursing textbook stacked on every available surface. This wasn't just poverty. This was a person fighting tooth and nail to build a better life against what seemed like insurmountable odds. "Mrs. Rodriguez." Jonathan began pulling out the envelope with hands that weren't entirely steady. "I want to help with your rent situation. Liam and Emily have become very close, and I understand you're facing some difficulties. Please consider this a gift." "No." Maria's voice was firm, but not unkind, and her refusal landed like a physical punch to Jonathan. "I appreciate the gesture more than you can know, Mr. Harrison, but I do not take charity, even from the kindest of intentions." Jonathan blinked, stunned into silence. In his world, everyone took money if you offered enough. Everyone had a price, a number that would solve their problems and make them grateful. This was entirely foreign territory. "Mrs. Rodriguez, please. I understand your pride, but Liam and Emily—" "And that is beautiful," Maria interrupted with a gentle firmness. "My son hasn't smiled like this since his father passed away. And from what Liam tells me, Emily is finding her voice again. But money doesn't buy friendships, Mr. Harrison. It complicates things. It creates imbalances that children should not have to face." "So what can I do?" Jonathan asked, genuinely perplexed, and feeling a sense of powerlessness that was completely new to him. "I can't just stand by and watch you be evicted when I have the power to stop it." Maria looked at him for a long moment, her intelligent eyes seeming to peer directly into his soul. When she spoke, her words would change everything. "You want to help? Give me a job. A real job with benefits and a future. I'm 2 semesters away from finishing my nursing degree, but I can't afford to continue. Help me build something that lasts, not just pay for a temporary fix that solves nothing." Liam looked up from his homework, his young face bright with an understanding that stunned Jonathan. "My mum is really smart, Mr. Harrison. She'd be the best nurse ever and help sick people feel better. Just like Emily helped me feel better about missing my daddy, and I helped her find her voice. It's like a circle of help." Jonathan stared at this remarkable woman and her extraordinary son. He realized he had completely misunderstood everything about their situation. This wasn't about charity. It was about opportunity, dignity, and a chance to build something meaningful. But first he needed to know one thing that Liam had just revealed with his casual wisdom. How precisely had this 7-year-old boy come to understand loss healing and the miraculous power of human connection to change lives? The next day, Jonathan Harrison walked into his office on the 42nd floor of Harrison Global with a completely unfamiliar feeling. He was a man accustomed to solving every problem with decisiveness and efficiency. But now he couldn't stop thinking about Liam's eyes, Maria's resilience, and the fragility of the voice his daughter had just found. He knew he couldn't simply write a check and consider the problem solved. The lives of these people could not be valued in dollars. He asked his assistant Margaret to arrange a private meeting with Maria Rodriguez. When Maria walked in, she wore a simple but clean outfit, a stark contrast to the Armani suits and designer dresses of the other senior executives. But the confidence and dignity radiating from her commanded Jonathan's attention. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Rodriguez," Jonathan said, motioning for her to sit in one of the Italian leather chairs. "After our conversation yesterday, I've been thinking a lot." Maria sat up straight, her intelligent dark eyes never leaving him. "I have too, Mr. Harrison. Liam hasn't stopped talking about Emily. He told me that 2 children found each other because they both have a special person in heaven." Jonathan nodded. "And I believe that connection is a miracle that I don't want to lose. You said you needed an opportunity, and I'm here to give you that opportunity." Jonathan handed her a contract. "This is a position in our company's wellness program. The salary is well above average, along with comprehensive health insurance, and most importantly, we will fully cover your tuition for you to complete your nursing degree. We believe your skills and life experience will be a valuable asset to our company." Maria was silent, her eyes scanning the numbers on the contract. Tears started to well up, but she quickly wiped them away. "Mr. Harrison, this isn't a job. This is a gift. You saw potential in a person whom society only sees as poor. I promise you I will not let you down." They shook hands, and in that moment Jonathan felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something right, not for profit, but for a higher value. Maria Rodriguez's arrival at Harrison Global was not smooth. Although she was legally hired and qualified, whispers began to spread. Most employees couldn't understand why a CEO would hire a woman from a poor neighborhood with an unfinished degree for such a high-paying position. And the first person to turn the whispers into a storm was Richard Blackwell, a senior board member and Jonathan's longtime rival. Richard was a cunning man, always looking for a way to oust Jonathan and take his position as chairman. His daughter Madison was in the same class as Emily. Richard began to leak information to the other board members, sowing doubt about Jonathan's unclear personal relationship and illegal favoritism. "People are talking," Jonathan Richard said with feigned concern during a private meeting. "This hiring, it seems a bit unprofessional. It looks like you're using company assets to solve personal problems." Jonathan kept his voice calm. "Maria Rodriguez was hired based on her competence and qualities. She has real-world experience in healthcare, and more importantly, she has an extraordinary work ethic. She is our company's greatest asset." "But her son is your daughter's best friend, isn't he?" Richard smirked. "That's an interesting coincidence." Jonathan looked straight into Richard's eyes. "It's a miraculous coincidence, Richard, and it has nothing to do with business. But the battle wasn't just in the boardroom, it also extended to Emily's school. Emily had changed. She was no longer the lonely child sitting by herself on the bench. She talked to her friends, laughed, and told her teacher stories about sandcastles and her wonderful new friend Liam. Emily's teacher, Mrs. Stevens, had called Jonathan, her voice filled with emotion. "Mr. Harrison, this is extraordinary. Emily is talking. It's a miracle." But that miracle became a thorn in the side of some people. During recess, Madison Blackwell Richards' daughter and her group of friends stood near Emily and Liam, whispering and giggling. "I heard your new boyfriend lives in the slums," Madison said, her voice full of disdain. "His clothes look so terrible." Liam heard it. He looked down at his faded t-shirt, the smile on his face disappearing. Emily saw the sadness in her friend's eyes. Madison's words not only hurt Liam but also touched Emily's raw wounds. The pain of losing her mother, the feeling of loneliness, it all came rushing back. She was used to being hurt, but now she couldn't bear to see her friend hurt. "You can't talk about Liam like that," Emily said, her voice trembling with anger and emotion Jonathan had never seen in his daughter. "My mum said your mum died, so your dad had to go find a new mum." Madison continued, the cruel words of a child raised on judgment. "Your dad is going to marry a bad mum from the slums." A red spark ignited in Emily's eyes. She was no longer thinking about the doctor's advice, no longer thinking about silence. She was only thinking about her friend and her mother who had been insulted. She swung her hand harder than she thought and hit Madison directly in the face. Madison fell down, crying loudly. Jonathan was called to the principal's office. Inside, Madison was sitting and crying next to her mother, a woman with a furious expression. "Mr. Harrison," Principal Stevens said, her voice grave. "Emily hit Madison." When we asked her why, she said Madison insulted her friend. "I was just telling the truth." Madison sniffled, looking at Jonathan defiantly. "Emily is playing with a boy from a very different area. It's inappropriate. My dad said it's a bad influence." Madison's mother, in a haughty voice, said, "Mr. Harrison, I don't know what you're trying to do, but this relationship is clearly affecting my daughter, and even your daughter. Maybe you should reconsider letting her play with a child from such circumstances." Anger flared in Jonathan, but he held it back. He looked at Emily, who was sitting silently, but her blue eyes were shining brightly. For the first time in years, she showed protectiveness and loyalty. "Mrs. Blackwood," Jonathan said, his voice low and cold. "My daughter found her voice again after 3 years because of her friendship with Liam Rodriguez. If you have a problem with that, I think you should reconsider your own prejudices instead of judging my decisions." He took Emily's hand and led her out of the office. As they left, Emily squeezed his hand tightly. "Daddy, I'm sorry I hit her, but I'm not sorry for defending Liam. My mum used to say that standing up for the people you love is the right thing to do, even when it's hard." Jonathan squeezed his daughter's hand back. He was proud, but also scared. Emily was learning to fight for what was important to her, but that also meant they would have to face a world that did not accept broken boundaries. He realized that building a bridge between two worlds required not just money, but also courage. That night, the media storm began. Richard Blackwell, unhappy with the outcome at the school, used his connections with a local tabloid to leak a sensational story. The large headline on the front page sent a chill down Jonathan's spine. "Harrison Global CEO, Compassion or Public Relations Stunt." The article, a masterpiece of innuendo and speculation, questioned Maria's qualifications, hinted at an inappropriate relationship, and even used the story of Emily's pain. It described Emily as a pawn in her father's midlife crisis. Jonathan sat in his study reading every line. He was used to lies, but this time they had gone too far. They had touched his deepest wound. The next morning, Harrison Global's stock dropped by 3%. The board of directors demanded an emergency meeting. "Jonathan, this has gone too far," a board member said over the phone. "We can't let it continue to damage the company's reputation." "This is a smear campaign," Jonathan replied, his voice full of anger. "Smear campaign or not, the image has been damaged. You've mixed business with personal matters," another said. "A woman with no industry experience hired at 3 times the salary of others just because her son is your daughter's friend. The shareholders will not be happy." Jonathan felt himself being backed into a corner. He had fought for this position, but he had never had to fight against the very people who were supposed to be on his side. At the same time, in the small apartment on Maple Street, Maria Rodriguez also read the article. She felt a cold wave of anger. Not because of the lies about her, but because they had hurt Jonathan, the man who had given her a chance, and more importantly, they had hurt Emily. "Mommy," Liam said, his voice trembling as he saw the article on the table. "Are you a bad person? Is Mr. Harrison a bad person?" Maria hugged her son tightly. "No, son, we are not bad people. It's just that some people are afraid of things they don't understand." But that fear began to become a reality. That afternoon, Jonathan received a call from Maria. Her voice was small and resolute. "Mr. Harrison, I've seen the news. I will be submitting my resignation tomorrow. Liam and I will be okay. I cannot let my son's friendship and your kindness be destroyed by these lies." Jonathan felt a panic rising within him. He had tried to build a bridge, but the toxic words were trying to tear it down. That night, Jonathan couldn't sleep. He sat in his study, looking at a photo of Sarah and Emily. Sarah had believed that success meant nothing if it wasn't used to help others. She had made him a better man. And now he had to make a decision. Would he choose the company he had built, or would he choose the family he had found? Would he choose power or integrity? Emily appeared in her pajamas. Her face was soaked with tears. "Daddy, Liam just called. He said his mum has to quit her job because people are saying bad things about us. He said maybe we shouldn't be friends anymore because we're causing too much trouble." Jonathan's heart broke as he looked at his daughter's pained face. She had found her voice, her joy, her best friend, and now adult prejudices were threatening to take it all away. "Is it true?" Daddy, Emily asked, her voice full of tears. "Do we have to stop being Liam's friends because people don't like us being together?" Jonathan looked at his daughter. He realized that his answer would not only shape his future, but also shape how Emily understood the world. Would love and loyalty be more important than public opinion and financial success? Jonathan knew he couldn't let fear win. He would stand up for what he believed in, for the people he loved. He would not let a cruel story destroy something good. He hugged Emily tightly and said, "No, sweetheart. We won't stop. I promise you." He didn't know how he would do it, but he knew one thing: he would fight for what he believed in. And tomorrow he would show everyone that once you find your courage, nothing can silence you. The next morning, Jonathan Harrison didn't go to the office. He cancelled all his meetings, ignored the constant calls from the board of directors and shareholders. He stayed home, sitting in his study, looking out at the city glittering in the early sun. The $5,000 check he had prepared for Maria still lay on his desk, never sent. It symbolized his old way of solving problems, quick, efficient, but lacking connection. Now he knew that the real solution wasn't money, but courage. After the tearful conversation with Emily, Jonathan had a sleepless night. He didn't just read the article once, but over and over, every word, every sentence. He realized this wasn't just a personal attack, but an attack on the values he was trying to rebuild. Richard Blackwell didn't just want to take him down. He wanted to prove that the world of wealth and power should not be mixed with the world of poverty and true hearts. Jonathan remembered what Sarah once said: "Bobby, money can buy everything, but it can't buy dignity. If you use money to solve everything, you'll never understand the true value of people." He had heard it, but hadn't understood. But now, looking at the fear on Emily's face, looking at Maria's self-respect, he finally understood. He picked up his phone, not to call a lawyer or a crisis manager, but to call Margaret, his assistant. Margaret, cancel all my meetings for the day. This afternoon at 2 p.m. I will hold an emergency press conference. Invite all the major news outlets, both financial and television. Margaret's voice was full of concern. Sir, the board of directors has advised against it. They say it will only complicate things. I don't need advice, Jonathan said firmly. I'm telling you what we're going to do. Next, he called Maria. She answered immediately. Mr. Harrison, I saw the news. I'm going to submit my resignation now. Liam and I will be okay. I can't let you risk your career for us. Jonathan felt a deep sense of appreciation. Maria, please don't do that. I'm on my way to you. When Jonathan arrived at Maria's small apartment, he found her sitting on the sofa holding her phone, her eyes red. Liam was sitting on the floor, unusually quiet, just stroking his small stuffed dog. He looked up at Jonathan, his eyes filled with worry. "Hi, Mr. Harrison," Liam said softly, his voice full of sadness. "I'm sorry for causing you trouble." Jonathan's heart ached. This child, the one who had brought his daughter's voice back, was blaming himself. He knelt down, placing a hand on Liam's shoulder. "It's not your fault, Liam. Never your fault. You are a good friend. There are bad people trying to make everything ugly. My mum said. My mum has to quit her job." Liam said, his eyes welling with tears. "Your mum is not quitting her job," Jonathan said with resolve. "And I'm going to let everyone know that, Maria. I'm holding a press conference."
"I need you and Liam to come with me." Maria was surprised. "Why? That will only make things worse. They will attack us, and the lies will seem even more believable. They won't be able to attack the truth," Jonathan said. "I need people to see the truth, to see our family, to see what we've built together. I want them to see Liam, to see his sincerity. I want them to see you, a woman who has fought so hard for her son. I want them to see us as a family chosen by the heart." Maria looked into Jonathan's eyes and saw an unshakable determination. She nodded. Liam also nodded. The boy knew this was a battle, and he was ready to fight alongside the man who had protected his family. At 2 p.m., Jonathan Harrison stepped onto the podium facing hundreds of reporters' cameras and blinding flashes. He wore a dark suit, but no tie. His appearance exuded sincerity, not the pomposity of a CEO.
To his right stood Maria Rodriguez, and Liam to his left was Emily, who was holding his hand tightly. Jonathan began to speak, his voice full of authority and confidence, just as he would command a board meeting. But this time, he was talking about something completely different. "Good afternoon. I'm here to address the recent speculations about the company's hiring policies and my personal relationships. 3 years ago, my life changed completely when I lost my wife. At the same time, I also lost my daughter. Emily, my lovely daughter, retreated into an untouchable world of silence. Whispers rippled through the crowd. The reporters were surprised. This wasn't what they had expected. I sought help from the best experts in the world, but to no avail. Every effort failed. Until 3 months ago, when I took my daughter to a park, and a little boy changed everything. Emily found her voice again because of her friendship with Liam Rodriguez, an incredible child who understood the pain of loss. He showed Emily that connecting with the world was not as scary as she thought." Jonathan paused, looking at Maria. "And Liam's mother, Mrs. Maria Rodriguez. She not only raised her son alone after losing her husband, but she also worked 3 jobs to pursue her dream of becoming a nurse. When I learned her family was facing eviction, I stood at a crossroads. I could have given her money and considered it charity, or I could have given her a real opportunity to rebuild her life. I chose opportunity. I chose to hire Maria, not because our children are friends, but because she is the best person for the job. She brings not only knowledge but also empathy, resilience, and kindness, qualities that I had forgotten." Everyone in the room was silent. They had never heard a CEO speak like this. Jonathan had shed his facade and revealed the raw truth. Harrison Global has always stood on the principle that success means nothing if it's not used to help others. Today, I reaffirm that commitment. Any board member who does not support this decision can resign. He stepped up to the microphone, his voice authoritative and unshakable. "I will not apologize for my daughter finding her voice. I will not apologize for recognizing a person's talent no matter where they live. And I will not apologize for believing that the friendship between children should be celebrated, not scrutinized. We are living in a world where kindness and courage are slowly being forgotten. I will not let that happen." As soon as Jonathan finished his speech, reporters rushed forward shouting questions, but he ignored them all. He had said what needed to be said. Now he would have to live with the consequences. His phone rang the moment he got into the car. It was Richard Blackwell. "Jonathan, what the hell did you just do?" Richard's voice was full of anger and panic. "The whole board is furious. You made a disastrous PR move. The whole company is going to pay for your insanity." "I told the truth, Richard," Jonathan replied, his voice unusually calm. "Something we seem to have forgotten how to do. There's a meeting tonight. There will be a vote of no confidence. You know that, don't you?" "No need, Richard," Jonathan interrupted, "because I just remembered something important. I own 52% of the company's shares. I don't serve at the pleasure of the board. You serve at mine." A dead silence fell on the other end of the line. "And now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go pick up my daughter from school. She's probably wondering if her friendship is about to destroy everything she cares about. And I'm going to tell her that some things are worth fighting for." Jonathan hung up. A sense of relief spread through his chest. For the first time since Sarah's death, he felt like the man she had loved, the man who believed doing the right thing was more important than living comfortably. He had not only fought for his family, but also for himself. However, the real test was yet to come. When he arrived at Emily's school, reporters were swarming outside. Principal Stevens had kept Emily and Liam in her office to avoid the cameras. When Jonathan walked in, he saw the two children sitting on the sofa, holding hands tightly, completely calm. "Mr. Harrison," Principal Stevens said, "after your press conference, we've received over 200 calls. Most are in support. Parents are sharing stories of their own children who found friendships that crossed social barriers. People are praising you for speaking up." "And the others?" Jonathan asked. "A few complaints," the principal said. "But overall, the reaction is very positive. It seems your message has touched more hearts than you expected." Emily ran to him, hugging him tightly. "Daddy, did you really say on TV that Liam and his mum should stay? Did you really say that friendship is more important than judgment?" "I told the truth, sweetheart," Jonathan said, hugging her tight. "And I'm proud I did." Liam, still on the sofa, looked at Jonathan with sparkling eyes. "My mum watched your speech on TV at work. She cried, but they were happy tears. She said you are the bravest person she's ever met." "Liam, your mum is the brave one," Jonathan said, kneeling down to his level. "Raising you on her own, working hard to build a better life. That's true courage." As they left the school through a back exit, to avoid the reporters, Emily tugged on Jonathan's sleeve. "Daddy Liam wants to come to our house today. I want to show him Mummy's garden." Jonathan looked at the two children who had found each other in the most difficult circumstances and had healed each other with pure friendship. He felt a warm, unfamiliar and wonderful feeling in his chest. "Of course, sweetheart," he said. I think your mum would be very happy for Liam to see her garden. That night, as Jonathan watched Emily and Liam read together in Sarah's garden while Maria helped prepare dinner in his kitchen, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Richard Blackwell. "Jonathan, I owe you an apology," Richard said. "The board met tonight, and after seeing the public reaction to your speech, we have unanimously supported your stance. What's more, we want to expand the wellness program Maria is developing, make it a key project." Jonathan stepped outside where he could talk privately. "What changed your mind, Richard?" "My wife," Richard said. "She reminded me that our daughter struggled with anxiety for 2 years after our divorce, and the only thing that helped her was her friendship with a girl from a completely different background. Sometimes we get so focused on protecting what we have that we forget why we built it in the first place." "Richard, there's one more thing," Jonathan said. "I want to establish a scholarship fund, the Sarah Harrison Memorial Fund for single parents pursuing a degree in healthcare. I want to make sure other families like Maria's have the opportunities they deserve." "Consider it done," Richard said. "And Jonathan, that boy of hers, he's special, isn't he?" Jonathan looked at Liam carefully watering the plants Emily had shown him, explaining to each flower why drinking water was important to grow strong. "They both are." As Jonathan hung up, Emily appeared next to him, taking his small hand. "Daddy Liam wants to know if we can have dinner like this every week, like a real family one that chooses to be together instead of having to be together." Jonathan looked down at his daughter's hopeful face, then at the kitchen where Liam was making Maria laugh with a vivid story about his day. "I think that's perfect, Emily. I think your mum would want us to choose family with our hearts." But as Jonathan said the words, he realized there was still one more test to come, a test that would decide whether their unconventional family could truly exist in a world that preferred simple love stories and clear social boundaries. Tomorrow would bring the final challenge, and Jonathan wasn't sure if they were ready for what it would reveal. Tuesday's a November morning. The crisis hit, swift and brutal as a winter storm. Jonathan was reviewing quarterly reports when Margaret, his assistant, burst into the office without knocking. Her face was pale and filled with urgency. "Sir, you need to see this immediately." She placed a local newspaper on his desk, her hand trembling slightly. The headline made Jonathan's blood run cold. "Harrison Global CEO, a case of personal charity, favoritism or an inappropriate relationship." Below it was a photo of Jonathan, Maria, Liam and Emily leaving the library together the previous weekend, looking exactly like a family. The article was a masterpiece of calculated innuendo and speculation. It questioned Maria's qualifications, hinted at inappropriate relationships, and painted a picture of Jonathan as a CEO bending company policies for personal gain. Worse, it delved into Emily's history, describing her as the damaged daughter of his late wife, Sarah Harrison, now potentially being used as a pawn in her father's midlife crisis. "Where did they get this information?" Jonathan asked, his voice low and dangerous. The reporter talked to some employees, former parents at the school, and even a few regulars at the park. "Someone has been feeding them details for weeks now." Margaret paused. "Sir, the board of directors is holding an emergency meeting this afternoon. They're concerned about the company's reputation." By noon, Jonathan's phone was ringing non-stop. By 2 o'clock, the story had been picked up by major financial news outlets. By 4 o'clock, Harrison Global's stock had dropped by 3%. By 5 o'clock, Jonathan found himself sitting opposite his own board of directors like a defendant on trial. "Jonathan, we've been friends for 15 years, said Richard Blackwell, the board chairman and Jonathan's former college roommate. "But this situation has become untenable. The appearance of impropriety is damaging our company's reputation." "There is no impropriety here," Jonathan stated flatly. "Maria Rodriguez was hired based on her qualifications and our genuine needs. A woman with an unfinished degree and no corporate experience, hired at a salary 30% higher than the industry standard, whose son happens to be your daughter's best friend. Board member Patricia Wells shook her head. Jonathan? Even if everything is above board, the optics are terrible. Jonathan looked around the room at the faces he had known for years, the people he had trusted with the company's future. Are you asking me to fire her? The silence stretched like a taut steel wire. We're asking you to make a decision about what's more important, Richard said quietly. Your personal relationships, or the company your wife helped you build. The mention of Sarah hit Jonathan like a physical blow. Sarah, who had believed in using success to lift others up. Sarah, who would have loved Liam's spirit and Maria's dignity. Sarah, who had made Jonathan promise to never let Emily's heart close off to the world. I need some time to think, Jonathan said, standing abruptly. You have until Friday, Patricia said. Either Mrs. Rodriguez resigns or we will be forced to hold a vote of no confidence in your leadership. That evening, Jonathan sat in his study with a glass of bourbon he couldn't taste, staring at a photo of Sarah holding a baby Emily. What would Sarah do? What would she say about a world that punished kindness and demanded he choose between his daughter's healing and the company's reputation? His phone buzzed. A text from Maria. Mr. Harrison, I've seen the news. I will be submitting my resignation in the morning. Thank you for the opportunity. Liam and I will be okay. Before Jonathan could reply, Emily appeared in the doorway in her pajamas. Her face was soaked with tears. Daddy Liam called. He said his mum has to quit her job because people are saying bad things about us being friends. He said maybe we shouldn't see each other anymore because we're causing too much trouble. Jonathan's heart shattered as he looked at his daughter's heartbroken face. She had found her voice, her joy, her best friend, and now adult prejudices were threatening to take it all away. Is it true, Daddy? Emily asked. Do we have to stop being friends with Liam because people don't like us being together? Jonathan realized that this moment would define not only his future, but also how Emily understood the world, whether love and loyalty were more important than public opinion and financial success. His answer would change everything. Jonathan didn't sleep that night. By dawn, he had made a decision that would either save his family or destroy everything he had built. He called Margaret at 6 a.m., cancel all my meetings for the day, and call an emergency press conference for 2 p.m. this afternoon. Sir, the board has specifically advised against that, Margaret said. I'm not asking for advice. I'm telling you what we're going to do. At 7 a.m., Jonathan knocked on Maria's apartment door. She opened it, still in her pajamas, her eyes red from crying. Mr. Harrison, I meant what I said. I'm resigning today. May I come in? We need to talk. In the tiny living room, Liam sat at the kitchen table, listlessly picking at the cereal in his bowl. The boy's usual light had dimmed. When he saw Jonathan, he managed a brave smile. Hi, Mr. Harrison. I told Emily she shouldn't be sad about my mum's job. We'll be okay. We're always okay. The child's resilience in the face of adult cruelty broke something open in Jonathan's chest. Liam, what if I told you that your mum doesn't have to quit her job? What if I told you that sometimes adults have to stand up to bullies just like kids do? Liam's eyes widened.
You mean like when Emily hit Madison for saying mean things about me? Exactly, Jonathan said. Except instead of hitting, I'll be using words. Very public words. Maria stared at him. Mr. Harrison, you can't risk your company for us. It's not worth it. You're wrong, Jonathan said quietly. You and Liam gave me my daughter back. You showed me what's important, and if my company can't survive me doing the right thing, then maybe it wasn't the company Sarah and I dreamed of building. At 2 p.m. that afternoon, Jonathan stood before a room full of reporters, cameras, and skeptical faces. Behind him, a large screen displayed the Harrison Global logo and mission statement, building communities, strengthening families, creating opportunities.
Good afternoon. I'm here to address the recent speculation regarding the company's hiring practices and my personal relationships. Jonathan's voice was even controlled. 3 months ago, my 7-year-old daughter Emily spoke her first words in over 3 years. She has been silent since the tragic accident that took her mother, despite the efforts of the best professionals money could hire. A murmur went through the crowd. This was not what they were expecting. Emily found her voice because of a friendship with Liam Rodriguez, an incredible child who understood the pain of loss, who showed kindness without expecting reward, and who possesses an innate gift for healing broken hearts. Liam's mother, Maria Rodriguez, is pursuing her nursing degree while working 3 jobs to support her son after losing her husband in a workplace accident. Jonathan paused, looking directly into the camera. When I learned the Rodriguez family was facing eviction, I was presented with a choice. I could have written a check and felt good about my act of charity, or I could have created an opportunity for a hard-working woman to build a better future for herself and her son. I chose opportunity. I chose to offer Maria Rodriguez a position within our company, a position she is uniquely qualified for, having overcome adversity while maintaining her dignity, her work ethic, and her commitment to helping others. Harrison Global has always stood on the principle that success means nothing if it's not used to lift others up. Today I am reaffirming that commitment. Maria Rodriguez was hired not because our children are friends, but because she embodies the very values this company was built on. Any board member who cannot support that decision is welcome to resign. Jonathan stepped closer to the microphone, his voice growing more powerful. I will not apologize for my daughter finding her voice. I will not apologize for recognizing talent regardless of someone's zip code. And I will not apologize for believing that in America friendships between children should be celebrated, not scrutinized. As Jonathan left the podium, reporters shouted questions, but he ignored them all. He had said what needed to be said. Now he had to live with the consequences. His phone rang before he got to the car. Richard Blackwell's name flashed on the screen. Jonathan, what the hell did you just do? I told the truth, Richard. Something we seem to have forgotten how to do. The board is meeting tonight. Your little stunt won't be necessary. The stunt won't be necessary, Jonathan interrupted, because I just remembered something important. I own 52% of this company, which means I don't serve at the pleasure of the board. You serve at mine. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go pick up my daughter from school. She's probably wondering if her friendship is about to destroy everything she cares about. And I'm going to tell her that some things are worth fighting for. When Jonathan hung up, he realized that for the first time since Sarah had passed away, he felt like the man she had married, the man who believed doing the right thing was more important than living comfortably. But the true test would come when Emily asked the question he knew was waiting. Would he have saved their new family, or had his public display made everything worse? The answer came sooner than Jonathan expected. When he arrived at Emily's school, he found her sitting in the principal's office with Liam beside her, both children holding hands and looking remarkably composed for 2 7-year-olds whose world had just been turned upside down. Mr. Harrison, Principal Stevens said, standing as Jonathan entered, I called because the children insisted on being together today, and with the circumstances we thought it best to keep them in the office to keep them safe from the media attention. Through the window, Jonathan could see news vans in the school parking lot, reporters with cameras waiting for a glimpse of the children at the center of the story. Daddy Emily jumped up and ran to hug him. Did you really tell everyone on TV that Liam and Maria should stay? Did you really say that friendship is more important than mean people's opinions? I did, sweetheart. I told them the truth about what you and Liam mean to our family. Liam came closer, hesitantly. Mr. Harrison, my mum watched your speech on TV at work. She cried, but they were happy tears this time. She said you were the bravest person she's ever met. Liam, your mum is the brave one, Jonathan said. Raising you on her own, working so hard to build a better life. That's real courage. Mr. Harrison, Principal Stevens interrupted gently. There's something you should know. After your press conference aired, we received over 200 phone calls. Most were in support. Parents shared stories of their own children, finding friendships across social barriers. People are praising you for speaking up. Jonathan felt a small glimmer of hope. And the others, a few complaints, mostly from people we've had issues with before, but overall the reaction has been overwhelmingly positive. It seems your message resonated with more people than you could have expected. As they prepared to leave through a back exit to avoid the media, Emily tugged on Jonathan's sleeve. Daddy Liam wants to come to our house today. I want to show him Mommy's garden. Jonathan looked at these two remarkable children who had found each other through unimaginable adversity and had mended each other's broken pieces with nothing but pure friendship. Of course, sweetheart, I think your mum would be very happy for Liam to see her garden. That night, as Jonathan watched Emily and Liam read together in Sarah's garden, while Maria helped prepare dinner in his kitchen, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Richard Blackwell. Jonathan Murphy owe you an apology. Jonathan stepped outside where he could talk privately. What changed your mind, Richard? My wife. She reminded me that our daughter struggled with anxiety for 2 years after our divorce, and the only thing that helped her was her friendship with a girl from a completely different background. Sometimes we get so focused on protecting what we have that we forget why we built it in the first place. Richard, there's one more thing. I want to establish a scholarship fund, the Sarah Harrison Memorial Fund for single parents pursuing careers in healthcare. I want to ensure that other families like Maria's get the opportunities they deserve. Consider it done. And Jonathan, that boy of hers, he's special, isn't he? Jonathan watched Liam carefully watering the plants Emily had shown him, explaining to each flower why drinking water was important to grow strong. They both are. When Jonathan hung up, Emily appeared next to him, taking his small hand. Daddy Liam wants to know if we can have dinner like this every week. Like a real family one that chooses to be together instead of having to be together. Jonathan looked down at his daughter's hopeful face, then at the kitchen where Liam was making Maria laugh with a vivid story about his day. I think that's perfect, Emily. I think your mum would want us to choose family with our hearts. Life after the press conference returned to an odd sense of normalcy. The reporters eventually left. Harrison Global's stock stabilized and even soared. The relationship between Jonathan and the board was mended, though Richard Blackwell had quietly resigned. Jonathan and Maria had started a new working relationship together, developing the company's wellness program into a flagship initiative. But their lives had changed forever. Every evening, Jonathan, Emily, Maria, and Liam ate dinner together. Laughter and stories filled a house that had once known only silence. Emily not only talked, but also laughed, debated, and showed her emotions. Liam, with his gapped-toothed grin and mischievous eyes, had become an inseparable part of their lives. They had created a family by choice, one not bound by blood or social standing, but by love and understanding. The arrangement worked like a miracle. Maria, with her unfinished degree and real-world experience, brought a level of empathy no executive could possess. She designed a wellness program, not just for senior staff, but also for janitors, security guards, and blue-collar workers. Jonathan used his power to ensure the program was fully funded, but in Jonathan's heart, a question lingered. He couldn't understand why a boy like Liam, who seemed so confident and joyful, could have helped Emily find her voice. Was it just luck, or was there something deeper? The answer came on a cold winter morning, 6 months after Emily first said Liam's name in the sandbox. A woman arrived at Jonathan's office. She was in her 50s, with salt and pepper hair in a neat bun and a serious face, but her eyes were full of compassion. She introduced herself as Dr. Eleanor Martinez, and she said she had once been Emily's therapist. Jonathan immediately recognized her. She was the one who had given him the final advice. Let her find her own way.
Mr. Harrison, Dr. Martinez, said, her voice grave. I need to talk to you about Liam Rodriguez. Jonathan's heart froze. Is something wrong? Is Liam sick? No, not that, she said. But there's something you need to know, something I should have told you months ago when I first saw the news on TV. Liam Rodriguez was also my patient. The words hit Jonathan like a physical blow. What do you mean 18 months ago when his father died in a construction accident? Liam was in the ambulance that took him to the hospital. He witnessed it all. The accident, the ambulance, his father's final moments. He also developed selective mutism, just like Emily. For 8 months, Liam wouldn't speak to anyone except his mother, and even then, only in whispers. Jonathan felt the room spin. That's impossible. Liam talks non-stop. He's the most vivacious child I've ever met. He is now, Dr. Martinez said, her eyes full of understanding. But when he first came to me, he was as silent as Emily. His healing process began about 4 months ago, around the time he met Emily. Dr. Martinez leaned forward, her gaze intense. Mr. Harrison, what happened between Emily and Liam in that sandbox wasn't just a friendship. It was 2 broken children recognizing each other's pain and healing each other through connection. This revelation shattered everything Jonathan thought he had understood. Liam hadn't been the one who helped Emily find her voice. They had found their voices together. The boy who seemed so self-assured, so innately gifted at helping others, had been battling silence himself. Why didn't Maria tell me? Jonathan asked, his voice barely a whisper. Because Liam made her promise. He was afraid that if people knew he was also broken, they wouldn't trust him to help Emily. He protected Emily's recovery by hiding his own journey. Jonathan closed his eyes, seeing every interaction between the 2 children in a new light. Liam's wisdom about missing a parent, his intuitive understanding of Emily's silence, his natural ability to connect with a hurting child. It all made perfect and heartbreaking sense. And there's more, Dr. Martinez continued. On the day of Liam's father's accident, he was working at a construction site for Harrison Global. The place where he died was the foundation for your new headquarters. Jonathan's world seemed to tilt on its axis. Diego Rodriguez had died building Jonathan's dream, while Jonathan was sitting in board meetings planning for the future. The man whose death had silenced Liam was killed, creating something for the Harrison family legacy. Dr. Martinez, why are you telling me this now? Because Liam is struggling again. The media attention, the scrutiny of his friendship with Emily, it's all making the old wounds resurface. Maria called me yesterday because he's starting to withdraw, starting to blame himself for the problems your family's facing. He thinks that if he wasn't broken, none of this would be happening. The irony was brutal. Liam, who had saved Emily by being brave enough to talk first, was now retreating into silence because he feared his brokenness was hurting the people he loved. Jonathan stood up abruptly. I need to see him right now. 20 minutes later, Jonathan found himself back at apartment 847 on Maple Street. But this time he didn't carry a check or a job offer.
He carried the weight of a new understanding and a fierce determination to save the boy who had saved his daughter. Maria opened the door, her face wet with tears. "Mr. Harrison, I was about to call you. Liam has been so quiet since yesterday. He won't even talk to Emily on the phone. Maria, we need to talk. All of us." They found Liam in his room, sitting by the window with the telescope his father had given him, staring at the cloudy sky with eyes that had lost their light. When he saw Jonathan, he managed a weak smile. "Hi, Mr. Harrison. I'm sorry for being weird lately. I don't want to cause Emily any more trouble." Jonathan sat on Liam's small bed, his heart breaking for this remarkable child who had shouldered burdens too big for his young shoulders. "Liam, Dr. Martinez came to see me today. She told me about your dad, about the accident, and about how you also couldn't talk for a long time." Liam's face crumpled. "She promised not to tell. I made her promise. Why didn't you want me to know? Because—" Liam's voice choked up. "Because if people knew I was broken too, they might think I was making Emily worse instead of better. And because my dad died building something for your company, and I was afraid you'd be too sad about that to let us be friends anymore." The words shattered Jonathan's heart into 1,000 pieces. This 7-year-old boy had been protecting everyone, Emily, Maria, even Jonathan, by carrying his pain all by himself. "Liam, look at me." Jonathan waited until the boy met his eyes. "Your dad didn't just die building something for my company. He died building something that would create jobs for hundreds of families. Something that would help others achieve their dreams. He was a hero, just like you are. I'm not a hero. I was just a scared kid who stopped talking. You are a hero because you found your voice again, and you used it to help Emily find hers. You are a hero because you saw someone else hurting, and you chose to be brave for her, even while you were still learning how to be brave for yourself." Liam wiped his nose with his sleeve. "Really? Really? And Liam, there's one more thing you need to know. Your dad's accident led to new safety regulations that have saved dozens of other workers' lives. His sacrifice meant something, just like your friendship with Emily means something." As Jonathan spoke, he saw the light slowly return to Liam's eyes. But the real miracle happened when Emily appeared in the doorway, having convinced her driver to take her to the apartment when Liam wouldn't answer her calls. "Liam Rodriguez," she said, with the authoritative voice of a 7-year-old on a mission. "You stop feeling sorry for yourself right now. We were both broken and we healed each other, and that's the most beautiful thing in the world. If you try to take that away by being sad about it, I will be very mad at you." Liam looked at her for a moment and then he burst into laughter. The first genuine laughter Jonathan had heard from him in weeks. "Emily Harrison, you are the most stubborn best friend anyone has ever had. Good. Now come over here and help me tell our dads that we want to do something special for all the kids who have mummies and daddies in heaven." As Jonathan watched the two children hug their healing connection stronger than ever, he realized this had never been a story about a rich man helping a poor family. It was a story about broken people who found each other and chose to become a family despite, or perhaps because of, their shared wounds. 6 months later, Jonathan stood in the children's wing of the Harrison Family Healing Center, watching Liam and Emily lead a support group for children who had lost a parent. The center, built with funds from the Sarah Harrison Memorial Family Fund and run by Maria Rodriguez Harrison, who had officially become a part of their family through adoption, served families from every corner of the city. "The thing about missing someone," Liam said to a room full of children, "is that it never stops hurting completely, but it can start hurting less when you find other people who get it." Emily nodded solemnly. "And when you help other kids who are sad like you were, it turns the sadness into something useful. It's like how flowers grow out of the dirt. The dirt isn't pretty, but it makes beautiful things possible." Jonathan smiled, remembering Sarah's favorite saying, Healing isn't about forgetting the pain, it's about turning it into something that helps others hurt less. As he watched their daughter, help another silent child find their words, Jonathan understood that this had been Sarah's plan all along. Somehow, from wherever she was watching, she had orchestrated this beautiful collision of broken hearts that were learning to beat to the same rhythm. Emily saw him and waved her smile bright enough to light up the city. Beside her, Liam grinned and gave Jonathan a thumbs up before turning back to help a little girl who was trying to say her father's name for the first time since he had passed away. The two children who had found their voices in a sandbox had become healers for a world full of people learning to speak after the silence. And Jonathan Harrison, the CEO, who had once thought love could be measured in dollars and success quantified by profit, had learned that the most precious things in life could not be bought. They could only be chosen, nurtured, and shared with hearts brave enough to remain open despite the risk of being broken. In the end, Emily had been right all along. Sometimes the most beautiful thing in the world is simply two broken people choosing to heal each other one word at a time, one day at a time.